And we are live streaming and waiting for LinkedIn to come up, and it takes a long time. Who am I going to pick on? Bob, I know you. Bob Brill, behave yourself. There you go. You heard it, okay?
Sure, why
I got
not?
it. Okay, we're live.
All right, ready for that feed?
Yep.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
send the feed your way. Have a great show.
Thank you. Dance with me. John, I want to see that rhythm.
Welcome to Read My Lips Radio, a lively hour of unscripted conversations with savvy creatives. Producer and host, akaRadioRed, asks novelists, artists, photographers, designers, comedians, actors, musicians, composers, screenwriters, directors, and technology innovators about their creative passion, inspirational muses, and how they create. Ooh, how those lips can talk. Now, here's akaRadioRed.
Thank you to the wonderful voice who introduces me. RadioRed in the house. My goodness, I have breaking news. It's cool here in East Tennessee. We're not up at 100 degrees. I think it's 82 today, and the new plants in my planter boxes, I think, are actually going to make it. Bye-bye begonias. They just went away. Too hot. I would never think of being anywhere except here on Read My Lips Radio on Monday afternoon, coming to you live on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Shout out to my engineer, Jordan, at Voice America. He's in Phoenix. I'm not. And we are live streaming on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube. And I want my guests, if I haven't introduced yet, I just want you to wave hello to all of our social channels so everybody can see you. There you go. And even Voice America can hear that virtual wave. Thank you, Bob. That was great. So it is July 22nd. Where is the year going? We didn't think we'd make it out of 2022, 2023, and here we are heading in the second half of 2024. It is the 203rd day of the year. Gregorian calendar used to be the Julian, but Gregorian. Pope Gregory didn't like the fact that I think, Kendra, between October 3rd and October 14th, there were no days. So what do you do with the birthday kids? I don't know. So they put in some extra days. 162 days remain until the end of the year. So I'm not ready to tell you where to get your imbibements for New Year's Eve. It's a little early, but it's the 30th Monday and nobody cares about that except me. Now, I want you all, and we didn't rehearse this, guess, I want you to make the letter L with your hands, please. Make the sign of the letter L. And on the count of three, you're going to join me in saying hello, L, 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 just like that. 1, 2, 3. Hello, L, L, L. Jordan, they're kind of in fourth place for the most in sync. They didn't do too badly. We had a voice, a baritone there with the dragging along. It was very dramatic. So make them in fourth place in the contest of the best LLLs. LLLs is lovely, lanky Laura Legs, our most loyal listener. John, she lives in Whitestone, which starts with a W, and I've been hosting a fake GoFundMe for about 8 years to try and get her to move to a place with L. I wanted her to move to London, but it was too hot and too expensive. I wanted to move to London. And Kendra, I have this bad habit of tilting my head when I read things. And I was looking to move to London, and the first N in London went upside down, and I landed in Loudoun, Tennessee. So I'm trying to get Laura to move here because it's about a 9-hour drive from Whitestone, New York, but so far no takers. So Laura, we're thinking of you. At 6:01 p.m. Eastern, Laura will email me and she will tell me what each of you said. Oh my goodness, like a little mini book report. She'll tell me what John, I'm going to say my names of my guests. John Miles, here's what John said. Oh, he was wonderful. And here's what Kendra Q. Dodd, we want to know what the Q means. And Bob Brill, I remember Bob. She probably remembers you, Bob, but maybe not, but we'll pretend. And this is what Bob Brill said. So you're going to get a little report. I'm going to get the little report, and she always loves the show. So there we go. Speaking of reports, I have a little poem to read right now to introduce the show. And when I call your name in the poem, each of my wonderful guests, I want you to wave furiously at social media. And we have a shout out to do to Mickey Mickelson in Canada, who brought these wonderful people to me. Mickey brought me guests last week and the week before, and about 100 times last year too. So shout out to Mickey. I hope Mickey was on the show last week. Here we go. Welcome to Read My Lips Radio, where creativity does flow. See, there's a rhyme in there. With akaRadioRed and her Scarlett mic in the live streaming glow. Bob, I have to highlight all the rhymes so I get them right. Today, we dive deep into the fulfillment of creativity's embrace with 3 creative guests whose passions we will showcase. John R. Miles, John, wave hello. Visionary and on an energizing quest, author of Passion Struck, 12 Powerful Principles, Guiding with Zest. He's dedicated to inspiring intentional living, planting seeds that keep on giving and giving. John, how'd you like that?
I loved it. Thank you for that great introduction.
You're welcome. You can rent that from me. I rent out the little line, so we'll talk. I negotiate after. Kendra Q. Dodd, consultant with a heart so grand, from school workshops to international lands. She's shaping workplace dynamics with grace. Her Fulfill-2B, she'll tell us later, platform impacts hearts in every space. Kendra, sorry for the bumble there, but I meant well. I hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you so much.
Brill, Bob Wave, career journalist with stories to share, from radio waves to documentaries with flair. Prolific author of the series Lancer, Hero of the West. Bob's news reporting earned awards with the best of the best. Bob,
Thank you.
Oh, you're
You know,
welcome.
I would give a shout out to Mickey at the time. I always address
Wait, I'm not done. I'm not done with my opening. Wait, hold on. So join us, dear audience, in our creative quest with akaRadioRed, always bringing her best, the fulfillment of creativity on this July 22nd day, with stories to inspire you, our global audience, to create and to play. What'd y'all think? Bob, I'll get you in a second. Pretty good? Pretty cool? Okay.
Awesome.
Bob,
Awesome.
I love
Nice
it.
job.
Now,
Thumbs up.
question. I went to ChatGPT. That's the LLM I use. I don't use Claude. I don't use Gemini. I don't use the others. And I put in all of your bios. Now, the bio limit for me is 999 characters, including spaces. Your bio, Kendra. Yours, John. Yours, Bob. I put them all in, and I said, write a little verse, and little opening, a little closing, and the fulfillment of creativity. That's the title of today, in honor, I think, of you, John. So how long do you think it took ChatGPT to respond with the core of the poem I read? I edited it. I did a lot of work on your sections, but the core of the poem, basically, most of what you heard came from there. How many minutes? Put up your hand if you think it took minutes. How many minutes? 0 minutes? Any money minute? Okay. How many seconds did it take?
15.
15? Okay. Kendra?
I would say 6.
Okay. John?
I'm going to go with 20.
Okay. The answer is 1.2 seconds. I hit the return button, the submit button, and it's there. It's on the screen before I can say 1,000. Used to be 3.5 seconds, then it was 2.5. And a friend of mine told me not to be polite. It would make it more efficient. Stop saying please and thank you to ChatGPT. It's not a human being. Well, I was brought up in New York, and I was brought up in the polite part of New York. I've never said that before. And I said, please, and I say, thank you. And I keep doing that. And it just keeps getting faster and faster. Can you imagine, John, all of that, like 300 characters of bios plus my opening, a little bit of me and a little bit of me, and the title of the show, less than a second and a half. What do you think? Are you impressed, John?
I'm impressed. That's
Okay.
Chat GPT is getting better and better.
There you
which is a little
go.
bit scary.
In many ways, it is. There you go. Bob Brill, you want to say something about Mickey Mickelson?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I always address Mickey as MM every time the double M's. And I thought I was going to use the double MM, but somebody told me it looks more like a gang symbol, so I decided not to.
Okay. Well, in my notes, I always put via or per MM. I've been doing that for years because I have so many people through Mickey. So I'm glad you enjoyed the poem. Welcome to Read My Lips. We're
It
talking
was better
about
than haiku.
There you go. We're talking about creativity. So let's go around the table. John, I have you as R in my notes. What does the R stand for? And do you want me to put it in your name, John? I'd be happy to do it, or not.
Yeah, there's a cool background story to this. I have a distant cousin in England named John Miles, who was a famous rock star of the 1970s era. In fact, one of his best friends was Robert Plant, and it was impossible to take SEO from him. So I introduced my middle initial.
Very, very nice. And I just put it in. I'm waiting for, there we go. There's a confetti. See that? That's in your honor, John R. Miles. There we go. I'm very good at putting middle initials in. John R. Miles, I'm putting you on speaker view. Would you please compress your entire life of creativity into 3 minutes and tell us who you really are? Welcome.
Thanks, Red. Well, the R is for my grandfather, Robert. So I'll start there. And my whole life in 3 minutes, how do you do that? I will give it a try. So I always grew up wanting to be a leader and wanting to follow in the footsteps of my my maternal grandfather and my father, who had served in the military. My grandfather was in the Army. My dad was in the Marine Corps, and I ended up going to the Naval Academy because I was fascinated by leadership. And I was really taught the importance of being a servant leader. And that's something that I took forward during my time in the military, which ended because I got an appointment to go to Quantico and become an FBI agent. But life throws us lemons sometimes. And what ended up happening to me is I was about 3 or 4 days away from my Quantico class when all of a sudden Congress couldn't pass a budget. I think we've seen that before. And all of a sudden I had to go to Plan B. And Plan B led me on a 20-year career as a businessman. Started out doing management consulting, and then that led me into Fortune 500 companies. And I spent time with some big ones, Lowe's and Dell being the two most people probably are most aware of. My time at Dell, I was a CIO for them, Chief Information Officer, and left there to pursue a life in private equity, both as a partner in a private equity firm and as the CEO of multiple companies. But as I was going along this journey, I guess sometimes in life we end up in a place that when we were younger, we never thought or imagined ourselves being. And that's certainly what happened to me. I found myself in what I call a portfolio career where I was jumping up the ladder, trying to focus on achievements and titles and all those things. And I guess during that time at Dell and as I got into private equity, something inside of me just told me that I wasn't where I was destined to be. And I think this is something that Henry David Thoreau calls quiet desperation, or refers to it in that way, because often we find ourselves trapped in this place where we feel stuck, unable to cross the chasm between what self-discrepancy theory calls our ought self into becoming our ideal self. And that's exactly where I found myself. And oftentimes when you hit that point, what you experience is this feeling of not mattering, that your life doesn't hold significance. And so a couple of traumatic things happened to me. I lost a best friend to suicide, and also was confronted by gunpoint. And those things kind of unearthed in me this desire to take my life in the direction I had always wanted to take it in. And so over the course of the next 5 or 6 years, I founded what I'm doing now, Passion Struck, which is now a movement, a podcast, a best-selling book, and so much more. So that's a little bit about me.
That's a lot. Well, thank you for your service in the military, and I'm impressed with your corporate career. I'm a corporate person, also used to be, and I understand about getting out and why do I matter? What do I do? And I grew up very shy, I think, and ended up producing TV, local TV, and a lot of radio shows. So we do have our twists and we do have our places we find ourselves at that precipice, don't we, John? Where either something dawns on us or we're dragged or taken or led by the red hair into something and say, what? Me? Could I? And here we are. So thank you, John. It's a pleasure to have you on. And I'm
Thank you so
intrigued.
much.
Well, I'm intrigued by the title of your book, because from what you told me, passion wasn't always the way you were living. But that's another story we'll talk about when we get to your creativity statement. So thank you so much. Kendra, Q, Dodd. First, we want to know what the Q is for, and then we want to know who you are. So go ahead and tell us both.
Quintessential. No, I'm just kidding. I'm teasing.
I love. Why don't you go with that, lady?
I know. I've done
perfect.
it. I forced it. Honestly, growing up, I hated my first and middle name, honestly. So I felt like it was too unique. I didn't meet my first Kendra till college. And so I felt like that was strange. And then I have a middle name that starts with a Q. So I forced myself, right? It becomes a conversation topic. It becomes something that it is, but it makes it unique where people do remember me. Like, hey, Kendra, oh, that's the one with the Q. But I grew up in the South, in South Carolina, in the United States. Very unique. I am probably as American pie as you can think. My dad was a cop, was a law enforcement. My mom was an educator. So here we are, and we moved. At that time, we had to move to a different, at 4 years old, we had to move to a different location because once my dad finished the police academy, they moved us because he was a state trooper. And here we are from a big family. My mom was one of 10, 28 cousins, first cousins, to now being a fishbowl and people watching us. And I was already shy, but even more shy. And I would just observe people and their differences and how that is. And people would, the judgment they would have on me and all those things in the South in the 70s. Even uniquely of law enforcement, which becomes always an idea in conversation, even now, and what that looks like. And so moved on, went to college. And then after I graduated, that's when I decided to travel. Wherever corporate America told me to go, I was in Fortune 100, I would go. So I've lived up and down from Virginia down to Southern Georgia. I've lived in the Northwest from Oregon to Oregon and Washington State. I've lived in Utah, and now I'm in the Midwest. So I have been open. I say I'll try anything for 3 years. So that's a little bit about me. So I was in corporate America, human resources, and labor relations is where I started. And so that was interesting as well. So now I have my own business. I do consulting, culture, all things culture. That's what one of my clients say. I'm like, when do you call on me? It's been a longstanding client. And she said, all things culture, when looking at differences and helping people see different perspectives, because I love that. And so that's what my book is. You can see it far, far away, but it's called Perspectives and how we can get along. And so I love people getting along or seeing broadening their perspectives, not changing it. And there's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit about me.
Big difference. Thank you very much. Where in Oregon did you live, Kendra Q?
I lived right in Vancouver. Well, like in the border. And then we lived a little bit. We didn't stay long in Portland because it cost too much. It was cheaper to live in
Eugene for
Vancouver.
almost 10 years.
Really?
I was brought there by my husband at the time and partly raised my kids there. And then I hightailed it back to the New York area. So
I mean, we still would shop because of the taxes, and we had friends there and our church was there, but it was so much cheaper to buy a house in Vancouver.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much. Did
Likewise.
you tell me what the Q? I know you wanted to go with quintessential. What's the, come on.
I know.
What?
It's Quinetta.
Spell it, please.
Quinetta.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. It's close to quintessential. You've got a bunch of letters in there. I think we could make an anagram out of it if we added a couple of S's in and out. I like anagrams.
No, is there ever any words without a QU though? I mean, that's a whole nother topic for another day.
We'll do a whole show on that. Thank you, Kendra Q. Nice to meet
you.
you. Barb Brill, welcome back. Here you are with your stunning book cover behind you, bigger than life.
Thank you.
And why don't you bring everybody up to date on what you've been up to? You were on my show, about a year ago, 2 years ago?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Pretend
that nobody remembers you. Don't be, I'm not being rude. Just pretend Bob Brill. So nice to meet you. Okay, introduce yourself now.
All right. I just celebrated 52 years in radio in this last spring. And one of the guys at work I was talking to the other day, I still work in radio, work at a local all news radio station here in Los Angeles. And we were talking and he goes, how do you write so fast? And I said, well, I've been around a while. I do write fast. And I said, how old are you? And he said, 56. And I said, well, you were 4 when I started in radio. He goes, okay, you got the experience. So basically I was born in still considered my real hometown, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a wide fan of all the teams, and Penguins, Pirates, Go Steelers. And but we moved to Southern California when I was the second time, when I was about 10. And I've always been a writer. I used to write when I was like 4 and 5 years old. I used to write jokes for family members, and I was a cute little kid, so they laughed, and that kind of made me feel good. And but then I got into radio right out of high school. Been doing that. I've had quite a wide career. Probably my 15 minutes of fame is I was beat up and attacked at Florence and Normandy during the LA riots back in 1992. And that's been one of the things that, every time there's an anniversary, CNN calls or somebody calls, and we go down to Florence and Normandy and we do an interview probably for a couple of hours and they use 15 seconds. So outside of that, but as far as my real writing career started back about 1909, excuse me, 2009. Let's don't go back that far. And when I decided to write a book on a female stripper that I sort of own a lot of the rights to, and who was on my very first pack of baseball cards. A baseball card. Her husband was a major league ball player, and her picture cartoon was on the back in 1959, and her name was Patty Wagon. I wrote the book. We published the book through a company in Philadelphia, and I've recently optioned the book and a screenplay, and we'll see how that goes. Some folks in New York are trying to raise the money, and I've written 16 books now. The Lancer series, I've always wanted to do a Western series, but I was always kind of hesitant because Western readers are so knowledgeable, and if you make mistakes, or put something there, it isn't there, you hear about it. So, but it's fiction, so I can make stuff up, right? So, it's the cover you're seeing now behind me is the seventh Lancer, which is Lancer Hero of the West, the Virginia City affair. And two things about this. This is the one book I've started using friends' names as characters. I always get their permission first. And it means they're going to buy the book, for one thing. And the other thing is that it's fun and they get involved in it. And I know some of their traits if they're friends of mine, and they usually are. And I can build that in. I just completed a book that I've hopefully we getting published here within the next few months, called 5 Seconds to Die, and it's a worldwide thriller, chase thriller, lots of car crashes and car chases and things like that. And I think maybe 15 people I know, I've used their names, and I've already informed some of them, so they're all kind of waiting for the book to come out, which is kind of fun thing. But the thing about this particular cover I wanted to mention, I just found out today that one of the magazines had a contest, and Mickey submitted it for cover. And it finished as a finalist, number 3 out of the top 10 as far as covers go. And I was always kind of curious about this cover because one of my friends saw it, and you're not seeing the full length of the cover. But if I turn a little bit sideways, the first thing you see is the horse's patoot, which kind of wasn't what we were looking for, but it worked, because Lancer's there. And I've always said that on any cover, I never want Lancer's face shown because I want the readers to kind of figure out who they're seeing in their minds as they're reading. And the other thing is I never want a gun shown on Lancer because Lancer's a man of nonviolence. He always uses his brains first, his brawn second. And if he has to go to the gun, he will, and you're dead. So it doesn't really matter anyway. And but I never want, you could have bullets on the cover, like on the very first cover, the first Lancer with the Prescott affair, but never a gun. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And
Thank you. Thank you.
Writing screenplays and doing that and trying to sell screenplays, which is the hardest thing to do, I think, in the world. I think you can run for president faster than you can get a screenplay sold. So.
We won't make any comments about that. Bob, I want to make a comment. You said you don't want Lancer's face ever shown on your book covers.
Right.
I appreciate that because when MTV came out and music videos, I was always annoyed and didn't want to watch because when they were doing my favorite, I grew up in the rock and roll era, and I imagined who Kathy's clown looked like. I imagined what the people at the dance looked like. I imagined what the girl in the car with the boy in the car looked like. Yeah. I put my own spin, if you will. Kendra, I put my own cultural, recognizable characters and traits and faces and whatever on those people. And when I heard the song, I thought about my version. And then they came out with music videos and they're telling me, oh, she wore a green sweater and he had a crew cut and the car was red. It's like, no, I don't want you to tell me how to imagine. The song is made up.
And that's how I feel the reader should be. I really do. And because I know if I'm reading a book, I'm imagining that character. And I don't want somebody telling me what that character looks like. So
exactly. And by the way, as far as using people's names, I'm still working on trying to get the past writer's block to finish my first very satirical novel. And the disclaimer in the beginning of the book is if any of the people look like, sound like, smell like, act like anybody you know or yourself. Get a good lawyer or have a stiff drink or go see a therapist because you're probably right. And I have to use a fake name on the book because people will know that I'm talking about them. So that's how I position that. Listen, it's time to go to the opening quotes. You've each been very generous and kind, sending me an interesting quote from a fictional character in a movie or TV show or a song lyric, and you're going to relate your quote to your own creativity. So John R. Miles, see, I added your R. There you are. You picked a quote from Andy Dufresne, classical character played by Tim Robbins, and it was also later said by Red Redding, Ellis Boyd Red Redding, played by, of course, Morgan Freeman. The movie we're talking about is Shawshank Redemption, 1994 American drama film. A little background, based on the 1982 novella by Stephen King called Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. There was no "the" in front of Shawshank. Written and directed by Frank Darabont. Here's the overview. Banker Andy Dufresne is sentenced to life, in Shawshank State Penitentiary for the murders of his wife and her lover, but he said he was innocent. He befriends fellow prisoner Red, contraband smuggler, played by Freeman, and becomes instrumental in a money laundering operation led by prison warden Samuel Norton, played by Bob Gunton. All kinds of interesting people, including James Whitmore was in the movie. So here's the line that was said at least twice in the movie. I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Get busy living or get busy dying. Oh, John, that's such a classic line. What does this have to do with your creativity? 3 minutes, go.
So this reminds me of a quote by Buddhist philosopher Daisaku Ikeda. And he says, what is defeat in life? It's not merely making a mistake. Defeat means giving up on yourself in the midst of difficulty. What is true success in life? True success means winning the battle with yourself. Those who persist in the pursuit of their dreams, no matter what the hurdles, are winners in life, for they have won over their weaknesses. And when I think about that movie, that's exactly what was happening. These guys were there, and they could have had a defeatist attitude, especially Andy Dufresne, but instead he made the most of the situation that he was put into. And when I think of what Passion Struck is all about, it's really this idea that most of us don't live authentically. And living authentically isn't just about the superficial pursuit of momentary pleasures or efficiency hacks. It's a deeper rebellion against the societal norms that end up dictating our lives. It's a refusal to settle for a life that's defined by someone else's standards. It's about breaking free from the quiet desperation that I talked about and reclaiming the power to author our own stories for a truly fulfilling life. And to me, that's what this whole movie was about, is this pursuit of authenticity, even when things don't go the way that we imagined them in life, which is what happens to the majority of us. It's what happened when I didn't get that opportunity with the FBI. Mm-hmm. It's what happened to me a few years later when I was working for Arthur Andersen, killing it, and all of a sudden Enron happens, and in 3 weeks, my life is completely turned around. And I think as we're facing this new world of more automation, AI, everything that's hitting us, more digital, people are going to have to realize that they're going to have to reinvent themselves. And the only way to do that is to truly know who you are and to live authentically. And when those moments happen, to be able to reposition yourself because you know who you are and you know how to take the talents that you have and to alter your course.
Thank you. That was very eloquent, Mr. John R. Miles. Very beautifully said. I gave up on the word authentic about a year ago because, and no offense to you, so many people use it, and I call it real deal with a hyphen. John R. Miles, you're a real deal person. And sometimes I've found living the real deal of who you are, live your passion, what's your why, what gets you up in the morning, what keeps you up at night, what are you all about, what do you want to do with your life, how do you want to impact the world culturally and every other way, Kendra? You end up being alone a lot because you don't always fit that cultural norm or that expectation or that anticipation or your neighborhood. You end up being out there somewhere doing what you want to do or what you need to do. And I found that sometimes is the edge That's the edge of what we embrace when we are our own real deal and don't live by other people's norms. And I'm talking personally, obviously. Thank you very much, John Miles. I'm sure you and I could talk an hour about that. And maybe we will. You want to make one quick comment, John? Go ahead.
Yeah, Red, I want to just follow. I mean, because what you just said is absolutely correct. And I'll just
Thank
use
you.
the example of Steve Jobs. I have this premise that I say that sometimes being right means being alone, because when we feel fulfilled with our values and where they're leading us, sometimes they don't match what other people's values are. I mean, that happens all the time. But if you look at Steve Jobs, he always stuck to what he thought was the right thing. It didn't make him always the most popular person, but in the long run, it really allowed him to take a differentiated view, both personally and professionally. So thank you
There you go.
for sharing your thoughts on that.
You're welcome. He's thanking the host. I appreciate that. Good job there. Okay. And by the way, my very first business radio show was called Coffee Break with Game Changers. I was working for SAP, the business software company at the time, October 5th, 2011. 2 hours after we finished the show, we got the news that Steve Jobs had passed away. So I will never, ever forget the date of my first show. And I never went back and listened to it because I had 3 guests. 2 of them were traveling in Europe and they got the time mixed up and they didn't show up. And Kendra, we're 30 seconds before live on my first business show. And I said, it's all thought leadership. We weren't selling anything. And I said to this guest who was a vice president of mobility, we're not talking cars here, we're talking digital mobility. And I said, this is before me too. I said, Dan, honey, follow my lead. We're going to talk about mobility for a whole hour. And he said, Bonnie, honey, I'm here for you. I never went back and listened to it because it worked out great. But the 2 of us talked for a while. I wasn't even taking breaks in those days. Anyway, let's move on. Thank you for the great quote, John R. Miles. There we go. And let's go to Kendra Q. And Kendra has picked a quote from, a wonderful song, Ease On Down the Road, from the 1975 Broadway musical, The Wiz. It's an R&B reinterpretation of L. Frank Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. The tune was composed by Charlie Smalls. It's the show's version of Follow the Yellow Brick Road, the road. Yes, and we're off to see The Wizard from the 1939 classic film, The Wizard of Oz. It's performed 3 times during the show. Dorothy and her friends, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion, dance down the yellow brick road and give each other words of encouragement. And I don't know if you know this, Kendra, you probably do. 2 versions charted as singles on the charts. One by studio group Consumer Rapport. That's interesting. 1975, and one by Diana Ross and Michael Jackson for the feature film adaptation of The Wiz in 78. So I'm not going to sing it because I try not to sing on the radio. It just ruins the show. But come on, ease on down the road, ease on down. Don't you worry, nothing that might be a load. Come on, ease on down the road. Pick your left foot up when your right foot's down. Come on, legs, keep moving. Don't you lose no ground. Just keep on keeping on the road that you choose. Don't you give up walking. John, this is for you, because you gave up shoes. Yeah, ease on down the road. Come on, ease on down that road. Kendra, how'd I do?
You did good. You did well.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very
yes,
much. Okay,
yes.
take over. Help me
Bravo.
out here. Why'd you pick this? Go ahead.
I think with that, there were so many things of where, I mean, there's, when I was in high school, kids babysat, they saw it. I think there's several things. It's an exciting song, right? It's when you feel defeated, there's something in which you always have something in you, right? So it is the concept of the Wiz of Oz, right? But it's the Wiz, and it has this New York in the 70s feel to it. But my kids love the music. But the creativity is that we can move forward, but then there's so many variations which you can have different things, right? So it is Diana Ross. It is Lena Horne's actually in it. She plays Glinda the Good Witch in the movie. Matter of fact, it's actually been reinvented. It's just got on Broadway this summer. What that does in creativity is also representation, right? You saw a Dorothy, you saw Toto, you saw the Tin Man, Michael Jackson with an afro, right? Of just the adversities of life, but finding a way when your right foot's down, your left foot up, moving forward regardless. But what I love at the end too, and that's the song though, is that it was in you all along. That's the very end of it. You know, Dorothy said, "Are you mean all I had to do was click my heel 3 times? I would have been back home." It's always in us. It's just us sometime, imposter syndrome or self-limiting beliefs that we hinder ourselves from our greatness.
I was going to quote that line when John was speaking with his quote. My dear, you had the power all along, the good witch says to Dorothy, and it was on the tip of my tongue, and I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't because I saved it for you, Kendra Q. Thank you very
you.
much. That was absolutely lovely. So let's go on to Bob Brill. We have a different type of quote here. It's from Grail Knight. Grail with an AIL and Knight with a KNI, played by Robert Edison with 2 Ds in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, 1989 action-adventure film directed by who else? Steven Spielberg, based on a story by George Lucas and Menno Miles. It's the third installment in the Indiana Jones film series, sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Harrison Ford returned. His father is played by, Sean Connery. I miss him. Interesting cast. The story, 1938, Indiana searches for his father, a Holy Grail scholar who's been kidnapped and held hostage by the Nazis while on a journey to find the Holy Grail. Blah, blah, blah. It was the highest grossing film of 89, earned $474 million worldwide, won the Academy Award for Best Sound Effects Editing, and a sequel followed in 2008, and a fifth and final film in 2023, just last year. Here's the line, and you really got to work on explaining this one, Bob. It's 3 words. He chose poorly. Bob, what? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know why I chose. No.
Now you tell me.
Actually, I have that video on my phone because it's such a cool quote. I mean, it says a lot because every day we face a choice in life. And every day we have a choice of either left or right, up or down, yes or no. Do I answer my boss with that email, or do I take that word out? So when I send my boss that email, and it comes down to basically you have to sit there and think for a little bit. Snap judgments are okay sometimes when you have to make them, but most of the time you have to think about it. And in that scene, the bad guy is they're trying to figure out which cup is the one that's the Holy Grail. Because the Grail cup will give you eternal life. All the other cups will give you instant death. And the bad guy said, "Oh, that looks like the cup of Christ. That's certainly a wonderful. It's all decorated and everything." And he looks at it, he says, "Yeah." So he drinks the water, and boom, he disappears into death and awful destruction. His body just it's really incredibly bad. And Indiana Jones comes by and he says, "This one looks very plain. That looks like the cup of a carpenter." And he does it and he drinks it. And that was the Grail. So he chose poorly and he chose wisely. He chose poorly just signifies to me that every day, no matter how many you may have 1,000 choices today. You had 1,000 choices whether to show up on this show. You had a choice of what kind of background. You had a choice of the lighting. Everything is a choice. And if you make the right choice, it's usually going to work. If you make the wrong choice, you learn by experience.
Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you, all 3 of you, for your very profound and interesting quotes. That's why I have so much fun with this. I used to have my guests quoting anybody, including Einstein and Mark Twain. And after a while, the same quotes were in Churchill and JFK and Gandhi and Maya Angelou. And after a while, it was even boring me. So about 3 years ago, I changed on all my shows. Pop culture. There's that culture word, Kendra Q. And the quotes got a lot more interesting. So thank you very much. Now I'm going to pick a creativity statement, 1 or 2 from each of you. Ask you to take 2 to 3 minutes at the most. Just tell us a little bit more, unpack it, as they say on the news. And then let's see where we go with that. If you have anything to say, any comments on anybody. So Kendra and Bob, if you want to comment on John, just wiggle one of your nice fingers at me and I'll call you in just a 1 minute because I want to get 1 from each of you before we do some trivia at the end. So John R. Miles, I'm looking at your statement number 2. You don't need to find it. I will read it. You say, I find the creativity sparks most intensely in moments of quiet introspection, often under the canopy of stars, or in the early pre-dawn hours when the world is still. And these tranquil interludes, this is beautiful. My thoughts roam free and my best ideas germinate. The act of creating is not just an activity for me, it's a necessary ritual that fuels my sense of purpose and well-being. And your follow-up statement is, creativity is not merely something I do, it's a way of being, connecting deeply with the world around me and being authentic. John, I wish we had a half hour for this, but take 2.5 minutes. Go ahead.
I absolutely love first thing in the morning as soon as I get up. And I try to get up early when the stars are out, just going outside with my dog and going on a long walk. And when I do it, I love to just be out there without any disruptions, just trying to bring in the world through my senses. What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I feel? And to me, it's really a way of reconnecting with myself every day and setting my intentions for the day. From the standpoint of being a creative, it's also a great way, whether it's the podcast, a blog I'm writing, chapters of a book, what have you, of really thinking about being intentional with my words and thoughts and how I want to move people with them. So that's what I was really trying to do with that statement. That was much more poetic than I remembered. But it's really, how do you use those quiet moments of your life that to me are a gift? And to me, they're such a gift that I try to front load my day, that I give myself that gift of self-introspection every single day as the starting point, because that's where I get to analyze, what did I fail to do? Speaking of choices that Bob was talking about, because our life is really about those choices, and whether we choose to make them wisely or not really defines how our life unfolds into either a valley of despair or a waterfall of greatness.
Ooh, you're being real poetic today. Valley of Despair, Waterfall of Greatness. That's lovely, John. I want to quote you on that. Kendra, I'm looking at your statement number 2. This is it. You had one about the dawn as well. You say, there is nothing like the feeling of markers and a dry erase board. I have a ceiling to floor dry erase wall. There are times when I will even write all the way to the top, writing and drawing my ideas, then creating mind maps, outlines, and action steps. The exercise gives clarity to my thoughts and vision on what's next. Kendra, take it over. 3 minutes. What is this all about? Go ahead.
I literally do have a dry erase board that is from the ceiling all the way to the floor. And when I'm creative, I don't know if you heard of brain dumping before. It's a technique. I use it with my clients. So it's like a brain dump of the creative juices of the next book, the next article, newsletter, things that you have. And there's something called mind mapping. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. And what that is it's blots and visuals that help create clarity to what you're thinking. And so I think the best way sometime is doing that, right? Having people just get it out there, because actually there is something, I don't know the words to it, that if you actually don't type it, but write it, your brain thinks it's doing something, right, towards that action that you're doing. So just even dumping it all on a board from ceiling to floor, there's inertia, right? Or not the inertia. It's the movement and energy, right? That's the opposite of inertia, but it's the movement that gets going with creative juices and concepts and projects that you can be done. And so I think the biggest thing that I encourage others to do that they don't realize is just get it out there on a sheet of paper, a notepad. I have a friend that's a speaker. She said she does it on napkins. Whatever it is, do it on something and get it out of your mind and get it to action.
I thought napkins were just for getting people's phone numbers in a bar. I'm only joking. John, I'm sorry, Kendra. John, go ahead quickly. What?
Well, Kendra, I just want to say I think you're absolutely correct, because to me, and when you have something in your mind, until you put it on paper, it doesn't become tangible. So to me, it's so important when you get those flashes to jot them down, whether it's on your phone, or for me, it works best if I do it with pen and journal, especially after I do those walks. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes. No.
Thank you very much. Very much. Yes, I like that. Let's go to something different here from Bob Brill. Bob, I'm looking at your statement number 3. You say, I have my most creative moments while driving in my car. As very often I'll see someone on a bicycle dodging in and out of traffic. I hope that's not New York. And I wonder why. And then I see a story behind it and after it. Very interesting. Bob, talk to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. I've always done that. It's like maybe it's the solitude of when I live in LA. I mean, it takes me sometimes 2 hours to get to work, sometimes an hour and a half. And if I'm not, most of the time I'm listening to the radio, but at the same time, sometimes I'm not. And I literally do see that. When morning I wrote that quote, I had just seen a person riding on the bike, and I was coming home like at 2 in the morning, I guess, because I worked till midnight. And this person is riding their bike down the street, and it's like, okay, why are they riding their bike down the street at 2 in the morning, and why are they weaving a little bit? There's a story there. There's something there. And sometimes it's a dog, sometimes it's somebody who cuts you off, sometimes it's could be just people walking or an airplane overhead, and I get some of my best ideas from there. And then what I do is I pull over and record that idea into my voice message on my phone, so I have it, and then I'll do what Kendra does, live by the paper in my life. I'll write it down. And that's basically it. It's just one of those things that I've always done because maybe I'm curious, maybe I see things, but I think more than anything else, it's the solitude of being by yourself and driving and just all the things that go around while you're still trying to pay attention to the traffic and the guy's trying to cut you off and go from lane 1 to 3 and you're in lane 2 and they're trying to get cut across.
There you go. So we have early morning, we have a floor to ceiling or ceiling to floor grease board. We have people driving in their cars. We have very early and very late, all the kinds of places that thoughts come to us. I want to read a couple of things to you. I have quotes on creativity I've collected. One is from Rapunzel, voiced by Mandy Moore in the movie Tangled, 2010. American 3D computer animated musical adventure fantasy comedy film. That's a lot of genres, isn't it, Bob? And the quote is, venture outside your comfort zone. The rewards are worth it. Interesting. Okay. Here's another one from the Rolling Stones from 1969 song. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you'll get what you need. Interesting. John talking about being authentic. And here's one, the quote, Kendra, Glinda, the Good Witch of the North from 1939 by Billy Burke, played by Billy Burke. You had the power all along, my dear. And then I have a quote from Kurt Vonnegut, who you all probably remember, American humorist and author of satirical and darkly humorous novels. He only wrote 14 novels, Bob, 3 short story collections, 5 plays, 5 nonfiction, and further collections since his death. And here's the quote. He says, go into the arts. I'm not kidding. The arts are a way to make a living, not a way to make a living. They're a very human way of making life more bearable. Practicing an art, no matter how well or how badly, is a way to make your soul grow. For heaven's sake, sing in the shower, dance to the radio, tell stories, write a poem to a friend, even a lousy poem. Do it as well as you possibly can. You'll get an enormous award. You will have created something. Any quick comments on that, anybody?
Yeah,
We've got a couple minutes. Go ahead, Bob.
Two quick
Yeah,
comments.
please.
Number one, I've written more books than Vonnegut. Are you serious? And number two, number two, he was dead on. Don't expect to make any money as an author.
There you go. John, any comments about anything that I just read? Anything come to mind?
Well, as Bob just said, you're not going to make any money as an author unless you're one of the lucky 0.001% of people.
There you
for
go.
one. So to me, you really got to do it because you're pouring your heart into something that you feel fulfilled with, that you hope will reach just one person and make a difference.
Very well put. And Kendra, I have a quote for you from David Byrne. David Byrne, who was the songwriter and former Talking Heads frontman. And he was on a radio show called Stephen Johnson's How Ideas Happen podcast. And he said, this is for you, Kendra, sometimes I have just the title of a song comes to me and I write it down. And I go, expand on that. I think there's something there. And I have in my computer a whole lot of musical ideas that maybe have a melody, a nonsense word melody, awaiting words. But usually I need something to start with. Hard to start from nothing. I'll accumulate these very little beginnings, and when I come back, I've got something to build on. And the comment in this article after this, Kendra, was, our minds fizz with fragments of ideas, puzzles to ponder, clues on how to fix a problem. Most of us undervalue that chatter. Writers and artists systematically capture the little beginnings. What do you all think? Anybody have a thought on that? I find that's true. writing little things down, Post-its, erasure boards, dry erase boards. Kendra, any thoughts?
I love that. And I want to talk about the one before that
Yeah.
of the concept of do something, even if it's bad. Because what it is a part of yourself that you're leaving a legacy, right? Writing a book, writing a poem, drawing, even creating music, whatever it is, it's leaving a part of yourself that will always exist. And so I think that's what's amazing. And it helps us find who we are as well. And so I love that part of, regardless if it's good or bad, do it anyway. So I just want to speak on that first one. That's what resonated with me. But the last one, I think it's seedlings, right? Everything, plant it. You don't know where it will grow.
There you go. Yep. I still keep little sticky notes on my desk here. Bob, did you find for some of your books you were thinking, collecting little ideas along the way? Just quickly, what did you find?
Today?
No, in general, when you're writing your Lancer series, do you find that things come to you and you write them down somewhere?
Yes. Oh, all the time. Matter of fact, well, usually when I'm writing, I'll have a second monitor open where I keep notes, where I just type notes, and the screen in front of me is where I'm writing the book. And I always will put in little things that I think of. I think, okay, gee, that's got to happen later, and I'll just type it in. And a lot of times I'm sitting here, like I said, this is a notepad that I was using today to write down notes on what you were saying and things like that. So to me, it's old school. But the other thing is, real quick, is that with the advent of technology, people always ask me, well, how do you write a book? And I say, you got to start writing. It doesn't write itself. You can't. You got to put your fingers on the keyboard, or in the old days, a typewriter. But even now, you can talk into your phone. You can record. If you can't type, you can have somebody else type it up, but you can record your book and do it that way. That's technology is just incredible.
All kinds of ways to start. I have a couple of notices here. Today is Mango Day. Anybody likes mango? It's National Hammock Day. I don't know if I've been thinking about a hammock, but I'm alone here anyway, so I can just, I don't know, sway around, dance in the kitchen. What can I tell you? And it's Spoonerism Day. Anybody remember? Don't be afraid when you make a blooper in what you're talking about. Let's see, it was eccentricities, they consider it. If you take the words bunny rabbit and you change it to runny babbit, that's one of the examples. It was named after Reverend W.A. Spooner, well known for making this error frequently. And let's see, July is the month of eggplant, corn, lasagna awareness. Kendra, I want you to be very aware of lasagna. And you too, John. Blueberry month, I'm making homemade blueberry preserves and they're amazing. Horseradish month, I would never have guessed. Hot dog month, grilling month, we know that. Ice cream month, picnic month, watermelon month, and culinary arts month. And I have some famous comments here from the music world. Mike Stoller was born on Long Island in 1933. Everybody remember Stoller and Lieber? Wrote a slew of songs, including the Jailhouse Rock, Yakety Yak, and Stand By Me. Neil Sedaka was born today in 1939 in Brooklyn. Daniel Benny of the doo-wop group The Reflections was born in Scotland. I don't even know who that is. Peggy Lee went to #1 in America in 1948, this day in history, with Mañana is Soon Enough for Me. Interesting. Let's see now. I'm looking for Ricky Nelson recorded Traveling Man, made a lot of stops. Anybody remember that one? James Darren guested in 1962 on ABC TV's Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea in the episode The Mechanical Man. And in 1965, the Beatles landed their 7th #1 hit in America, 8 days a week. I love only you. I try not to ruin the show by singing. We've got about a minute left, and so I'm going to head into my closing here. But I want to thank the three of you very much for playing with me and my party here, which is called Read My Lips Radio. Cool conversations with creatives. I am akaRadioRed, and here in 2014, Bob and Kendra Q and John R. I closed the show with the top 10 tips for women in 2014. I saved that in my notes, and here are the top 2. This is for you and me, Kendra. Aspire to be Barbie. The biatch has everything. Kendra, did we get a smile on that one? There we go.
I love it. Yes,
I love it.
Have it.
And I got 3 of them for you. And if the shoe fits, buy one in every color. I've been accused of that. Thank God it only came in 3 colors. And take life with a pinch of salt and a wedge of lime and tequila. There you go. And now let me do my Derek Bob like that one. Okay, here's my normal closing. Life is short. Break the rules. Forgive quickly. Kiss slowly. Yes. Love truly. Laugh uncontrollably. Everybody laugh with me uncontrollably. 1, 2, 3. I got John to laugh. There you go. And what's the rest of this? Never regret anything that made you smile. We got one more minute. Work like you don't need the money because nobody else really cares. Dance like no one's watching. When I was teaching disco in high heels on the top of a table in a high school cafeteria in Eugene, Oregon, because they didn't have a stage for me. And my partner was the chief dance teacher, and I got $2 an hour as being his assistant. I didn't like that, Kendra, at all. Yeah, everybody watched because I never fell off the table, but boy, could I dance. Sing like nobody's listening. I tried not to sing today. And love like you've never been hurt. We all have. Get over it. Let your heart regrow, regroup, be real, right, John? And get back in the game. Let your heart learn to love again. Money talks, chocolate sings. La. And last but not least, I stole this line from another host many years ago. Thank you for turning me on. Radio Red signing off. We're just about on time. Jordan, I'll give you back 30 seconds here. Guests, don't go away. Wave goodbye to LinkedIn. Wave goodbye to Facebook. Wave goodbye to YouTube. And wave goodbye to Voice America Empowerment. Jordan, are we out?
All clear.